Hi, Kazu. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books.
Okay. Oh yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. I have to tell you that your Amulet series is my older son's favorite series of all time, and he was so excited that I had the opportunity to interview you. So anyway, here I am. That's what we're doing here.
Uh,
um, so his first question to you is, where did you come up with the idea for the Amulet series?
you should just bring him on, and we
You
can.
know, I asked him, but I think he's just being shy or something. Anyway, he doesn't. He's 13, and he's anyway.
So the question was, what was the inspiration? Was
What
that
was
was that?
the inspiration? And then tell listeners a little more about what the Amulet graphic novel series is about, and how there's 1 through 8 and all the rest.
Yeah. So I've been drawing comics since I was 5. So I always tell people, you know, when they ask me like when did I start, I usually ask them when did you quit, because I think we all drew cartoons when we started. So I'm just the last kid out of the pool, so to speak, because I just been doing it just out of sheer interest. And when I started, I was inspired by Garfield at the Scholastic Book Fairs. I wanted to get the newest edition of Garfield and be the first one there because all the other kids wanted it too. Um, and I read Mad Magazine, things like that. And so I did a lot of cartooning really early on. But it wasn't until I read Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind by Hayao Miyazaki where I realized, oh, I could do these cartoons and I could write stories with them that had a literary quality to it. It had the scale and scope of something of like Lord of the Rings, and I felt like I didn't up to that point I didn't realize that I could do that with my cartoons. And so when I read that, I said, okay, I'm going to try to do this instead of just the funny stuff, because I used to draw hilarious cartoons all the time and got myself into so much trouble in
Uh-oh.
school. I was in detention for drawing all sorts of silly cartoons on
And
the
would anyone else find them funny except you, or did everybody find them funny?
well, all the kids did.
Okay, good. All right, just checking.
Loved it. So did some of the teachers, but they would scold me because they knew that you're supposed to scold the kids for doing things like that. But I was always kind of a cartoon troublemaker, and I always thought of cartooning as that, and I did as something kind of irreverent, something a little off the rails. And then I read Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind, and it had a huge impact on me. It just felt like I knew at that moment, the moment I finished reading that book, that I would have to do this sometime in my life. That it would be a mountain that I have to climb, and it had nothing to do with career motivations. I was not motivated by career ambitions to do this. In fact, if I was motivated by that when I started, I think most people would have considered me quite foolish.
What did you want to do? What were you motivated to do?
I just wanted to make my parents happy. I was okay with, my mom told me I was going to be a doctor pretty early, so I just assumed that I was going to follow some kind of path like that. And I, so I thought, oh, well, maybe I could take this art stuff and turn it into something respectable. And I thought maybe it could be filmmaking. And so I went to college for film studies and learned how to be a filmmaker with live action filmmaking, be on the set, work with actors, write screenplays, all that stuff. And that was kind of the path that I was going to be on. When I got out of school, it was really difficult to find work um, as a live action filmmaker, as you can imagine.
They don't
Uh,
they don't post that on
yeah,
Craigslist or Monster or whatever else the sites are these days.
we want a director.
Yeah, yeah.
Director. That was the issue. So there's a bit of a logjam there, and I ended up just getting work as a graphic designer. And it led me down this path where I actually I was kind of on the cusp of becoming an architect, because I ended up working in the field of architecture as a graphic designer. Did very well. And then 9/11 happened, and it was a wake up call for me. And I thought, well, if I was going to have to just go out right now, if things like the chips are down, everything's over right now, if I look back at my life, did I do the right thing? And I said no, I don't think so. I think that I have something more to offer, and it's through cartoons. As little value that some other people might find there to be in cartoons, I found there to be a lot. And I knew that I could be somebody who could make that case. So I thought if I didn't do that, I'd be failing the world. And so ever since then, it's been really easy on as far as career trajectory. Even when I failed with cartoons, I've just stayed with it. Just said, you know what, even all these opportunities came my way, movies, TV shows, all these different things. People have been really kind to me all along the road, and I've had to turn down many great opportunities to stay focused on the one thing, and that's to draw cartoons and comics. And I think that the world is starting to catch up to that now. They're starting to understand the value of them in our society.
So true. On 9/11, did you have a personal connection to it or firsthand experience, or did you just hear about it? Like, where were you and everything?
I was in downtown Los Angeles working in the it was at the time the city group building, I believe, and it was the top floor. I was a graphic designer for Altoona Porter Architects, and woke up the morning of I got a phone call from my coworker and good friend, Ryan. He called me and he said basically they're evacuating the building right now. And he said, don't come in to work. And I was like, what's going on? He said, just look at the news. And I saw what was going on, and and there was even reports of a plane coming to LA, and that's the one I believe that landed somewhere in the middle America. And so, yeah, I mean, it was, I was only in my early 20s, and I just thought like, you're just supposed to get a job. Everything's, everything's going to line up and everything's going to be easy to understand. You can chart a course for your success, and that's the career, and that's your life, and it's safe, and it's all okay. And then that happens, and you realize, oh man, we live in a volatile world, and things can just change at the drop of a hat. So I just decided, if that's going to be the case, I better put my best foot forward, and not just because when I was doing graphic design, it was convenient for me because I could make good money, but it wasn't what I could produce. Graphic design was only one element of the things I've trained to do. I trained myself to design well, but also illustrate well, but to write well as well, and speak as well, like this.
Yes,
And
you're speaking very well.
have one thing going, and I thought I was really wasting something, and I felt like I would be really letting down a lot of people if I didn't get back on my horse. And so here I am. And
I had that same experience with 9/11 actually. But I lost my best friend and roommate who was working in one of the towers that day, and I was 25 at the time. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about the impact of the people like us in our 20s and how our careers, I wonder if it's a whole generation where we search for more meaning from the beginning, whereas other people, maybe they were too entrenched in their careers in their 30s and 40s even. Maybe the people in their teens hadn't even had to pivot because they hadn't had a vision yet. But I feel like all of us had a chance to say, wait a minute, no. Like, I'm going to bring my whole self to what I'm doing, and now's the time. So anyway, it's nice when I hear it because it's
right. I mean, that was it.
that was it. That was it. I was like,
it.
if I'm going to die at my desk, I better be doing something that means something. That was sort of my theory. So, and look at your books now. You're like best-selling series and this hugely successful artist, and you just had to listen to yourself. It just is sad almost that it takes these massive world-scale events to shake us into doing what our calling really might be.
Yeah, and I feel like success is really a reflection of a responsibility. I feel like it just means that a lot of other people have recognized that you are taking on a responsibility that you may be able to fulfill, and the success comes your way, and it becomes a new responsibility to have to deal with it. It's something that I think a lot of young artists don't hear enough, is that about the idea that once things do go well for you, are you doing the right thing then? Are you prepared for that moment? Because that's a big one. It's a big transition from going from, hey, no one knows who I am, to now everybody's listening to what I have to say.
Yeah. So how did you handle that?
I came into it so different, in such a different way, because of 9/11, because of, I mean, it was so visceral. I mean, the impact of the event. My wife was in Manhattan, so she was right there to just she was looking at, she was having to deal with all the stuff that was happening on the ground, trying to match it with, you know, um, match it with how the media and everybody was talking about it and stuff, and how different all the different viewpoints were, and realizing that, things can really spin out into chaos if we're not careful about how we go about our lives. Cartoons in general, they're really best at clarifying information, to simplify things to the point where it can be universal. A cartoon can be read by people who speak any language. It doesn't matter what language you speak. You can pick up an Amulet book and understand it to at least some level, and then you may even use it as a guide to allow you to understand the words that are inscribed in there. So you're going to learn English. I think there's a lot of kids who learned English through Amulet. um,
It's it's almost like hieroglyphics in the olden days and the old cave drawings. I feel like way back when that was how people communicated. They didn't even have language. Like this is the most elemental means of communication there is that withstands time and borders and anything else you want to throw at it. So,
I mean, even the written language, there are pictures too,
yeah.
you know, that we memorize, and so I think we often forget that. It's so interesting too, because we often look down on the cartoons, despite the fact that they are the most ancient form of communication we have. um, but maybe there's value to that. I think often it allows cartoons to have more power because of how disarming it may seem that we continue to say cartoons are, kid stuff. It's not, it's garbage. It's just something silly. But I think that allows people to come to it with unconditional love.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's an interesting thing. It's one of the reasons why I've stuck with it.
Um, and to your point earlier, where you were talking about managing the success of like being a successful in whatever endeavor you're having or you've achieved rather, how did you adjust to being just like you, graphic designer you, to you with like lines out the door at the bookstore you?
Yeah, well, I was really fortunate because I got to go slow. This success didn't happen overnight. I mean, if it was I mean, some people might perceive that it was an overnight thing, but it was a long night. Took
That's
one
funny.
in there at least. But I was fortunate to be working with David Saylor, who created the graphics books imprint at Scholastic, and he designed the Harry Potter logo and worked with J.K. Rowling on those books, and saw the success of that and all the other successes that Scholastic has seen over the years. And so when I was at the start, he was really helpful in coaching me through it. And he pretty much just told me it's going to happen for you. So here are the steps, and here's what you want to consider. And when I was even painting the 15th anniversary edition paperbacks for Harry Potter, they actually at Scholastic, they even coached me through how I should speak to media,
Hmm.
all those types of things. And I thought, well, this is really neat, because I mean, I think I was already pretty well versed in all that, but it was really nice to get their feedback, and like a kind of a really professional ground level information, very detailed stuff that they told me, like, don't say this, say this, say that. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah, that's helpful.
That's a
So
course that everyone should take in general. Every child should have to take that course before they graduate. Maybe
yeah,
even before they graduate, lower school. That would be nice to save the middle schoolers some issues.
for
And then I read in your bio that you had some form of meningitis and you were in a coma. What was that all about? What happened?
Yes. So I nearly died, and that really like helped redefine like this part of my life. Yeah, I got meningitis. I'm not exactly sure how that happened. I'm guessing it might have been something to do with I had a broken hand, and I think it may have been some kind of expired drugs or something like that, injection, from the steroids that they put in to like for the pain. My guess, but we don't know that. I mean, we'll never know now. But I yeah, I came out of it having lost a lot of my memory functions. So now, like, my short-term memory is pretty bad. uh, but prior to that, my memory was so sharp that it actually scared people. And so Amy, my wife, often tells me that I came out of the whole experience a nicer person, less intimidating.
Wow. How
So,
old were you when this happened?
uh, what was it? It was 2012. So,
8 years ago. So in your 30s or something? 20s? 30s? I don't know
yeah,
how old you are.
it was 34. So that's
Okay.
all right. And yeah, so when I woke up, I couldn't draw. I couldn't walk. That couldn't walk. I had to figure out how to do all that stuff again. No one kind of knew what was going on because I was even between books. I really didn't. I was so fast at making Amulet at the time that it pushed us back about a year. People complained, but yeah, I had to learn how to write with a brain that just didn't work as well as it used to. So now I have to take more notes. I'm still that I'm the guy after the event now, so I have to take tons of notes. I have to know that I'm going to forget everything all the time. And this is, I'm sure, I mean, after taking care of my grandparents and hanging out with older people, I see that in how they are. That's what happens when you're older. But my brain kind of ended up having to accelerate because of this situation, and now I just have to deal with kind of an old person's brain while we're
Wow.
it's the biggest struggle now making these books, and one of the reasons why it takes a lot longer is that I need more sleep, because if I don't have the sleep, I can't repair my brain. And number two, it just doesn't. I can't retain information the way I used to, and so it's like it's like a fish. I'm like a fisherman. I've always been a really good fisherman of ideas and things like that, but now I've got a net with like a huge hole in it. So how do I do that? Like how do I still keep the books at the level that they always were at, and not feel like I've lost a step. It's really just meant that I have to be more disciplined in my effort.
Wow. Did you consider just not going back to it, or did you ever think like, well, that's it for me? Or
Like I said, I'm like the last kid out of the pool. I don't quit.
okay, that's great. I mean,
So no,
wow, that's amazing. What a story.
yeah, I mean, the work itself helped me though. It's like it was like it's cognitive therapy. For especially working on the Harry Potter covers, because I couldn't write my book at the time. Scholastic asked me to do those and on the side for a little bit, and so I took a little time off just to paint, and that really helped. Like to get myself back on my feet. I didn't have to worry about the difficult task of writing a book. All I had to do is focus on drawing, and drawing
All
is like,
you had to do is paint the cover of like the most popular series on the planet, just a little rehab exercise for you. Wow. Well,
to be honest, it was enjoyable. I really, it felt like a break, and I was so glad to be able to take that, because writing these stories is so much work. It's such a challenge. And drawing it is the fun part.
hmm, interesting. So when is number 9 coming out? Can you say yet or not yet or
Well, I'm gonna be done relatively soon. We're on kind of the long final stretch of this. This is the final stretch of this entire series. That's why I'm kind of I'm taking my time to do this right. I don't want to rush it out. I know Scholastic wanted it, like everybody wanted it earlier, but I really held off on it. I just felt like it needed time. It just needed to marinate. I needed to get in all the ideas that I was trying to get in all these years. This is my one last shot on the series, so I just wanted people to want to reread the series just to get to the final book. And I find that too many series these days, because there's so much money and so much pressure involved, a lot of the writers end up not I mean they kind of lose a lot of energy down the stretch, and so you'll often see things kind of just peter out a little bit, and not complete, and it doesn't complete itself in the ways that I think a lot of fans want to see it done. And I feel that I have an opportunity to avoid that. I feel like I can do this right, but it'll come at a cost to me because I got to pay for my time and just spend more time. I'm not an employee. That's something that people have to remember. So I'm not just like I'm not on somebody else's clock. I'm on my clock. But I'm taking that extra time and putting that extra energy and resources and everything to make sure they get my best shot. Like this is going to be, I mean, it has to be the best book in the series, by a long shot, in my opinion, or else it's just going to be disappointing. It'll disappoint me. I'll be disappointed in myself if it's not the best sci-fi fantasy graphic novel ever made.
Wow. That is some drive. You should bottle that up and sell a little bit with every book. How does your mom must be proud. Like, how does she feel now that you did not become a doctor and instead this is what you've created, this alternative universe and healed people in a different way? How does she feel?
She would have been proud of me no matter what I did.
Oh,
Loves me, whatever I want to do, however I want to do it, she's there for me. So, and I do this for her too. So, she would have been devastated if I didn't do art, probably, because she knew how much how much I put into it. So yeah, in fact, it was a really, I guess I could tell the little story about when I was younger, when I was in high school, and I actually had to lie to my mom. And I told her that I quit art at the time. And it was a weird thing because I think she was devastated that I would say something like that. But it was actually to protect it, to protect the art. I was already like in high school, was a bit of a artist, like superstar as a kid. I was kind of a prodigy at this. So I was being offered a lot of work early on. And I saw that I could now be moved into all these different directions, and my destiny was way out of my hands if that happened, if I took on opportunities that were coming my way. So I said no to everything. And I told my mom too, because she was pushing me into classes and different things and saying, here, you talk to this person, talk to this person, and trying to be a good parent and seeing if she can help me up some kind of a ladder. And every time those opportunities showed up, I decided I got to say no to all of them. Just my spidey sense told me that I had to just, I had to just like become like a turtle in a shell and just say, I'm going to protect the art and the writing, and the sanctity of the process of doing this. It needs to be within the control of the artist. And so that's why I quit art. I quit art to go to film school, to go put my mind on something else. And I went to film school not to make films, but actually to study them. I went to UC Santa Barbara and I have a film studies degree. So it's research, it's history, it's analysis of movies, watching, it's being like a film critic, not a filmmaker. And I think it was one of the best decisions I'd ever made, because it gave me time to absorb information and know how to do that. Something that I think artists don't do often enough. They don't know how to curate the information they put in their own brain and put into their work. They don't research very much. They often just practice. There's so much emphasis on practice, so much emphasis on drawing really, really well. And really, you don't need to draw really well. You need to draw clearly. You can clearly communicate your idea, and that's a good drawing, in my opinion. It's, I mean, it's subjective, but my opinion is that if the idea gets across, that's a great drawing. That's it, and it doesn't really take tremendous skill to do that. So that's that was something that I had to take control of early. And I don't know how I got derailed into this thing, but I just thought it was something that some kids might need to hear, or maybe a mom, maybe a dad, needs to hear that about their own kids. You want to give them agency, is I guess what I'm saying.
I think that's great advice. Do you have any other parting advice to aspiring authors out there?
Spilled so much time with that. Oh my goodness. Just try to involve yourself in everything. See as much as you can. Don't, I think there's too much pressure to succeed early, and I don't think you need to. I think that Maybe you do if you're a professional athlete, because there's only so much time your body can do the things an athlete needs to do. But if you're doing this, your whole life is your career. So you can be 70 years old and starting at making art or writing. And when you have something to say and you put it out there, it's going to be, if it's worth its salt, it's going to be there for probably beyond your life. And so you might want to spend a lot of time thinking about what it is you have to say before you do. Instead of practicing and putting it all out there for everyone to see, you can do it in your private life. Just hang out with your make a web comic for yourself and for your friends. Don't worry about people making it popular or getting a lot of money. Just worry about making sure that you are saying the thing you're looking to say, and that you are just slowly getting better at your craft. And that's about it. And your success isn't really in your hands. It's often in the hands of the world at large. So, and if you find success, then I hope you're ready for it. And that's that's another thing. That's a whole nother discussion.
Wow. Well, thank you, Kazu. This has been so interesting, and I really enjoyed our conversation. And I will now send this off to my son so he can listen to the whole thing.
He should be a part of the interview, because the kids they're some of my best feedback and editing advice that I get for my book. So I love hearing what they have to say. I always listen. So if you guys,
well, if he has any feedback, I'll shoot it over to you.
okay. So,
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.